Hello and welcome to Macro Mondays here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is March 3rd, 2025. And well, Bitcoin had a pretty volatile Sunday and Monday. And of course, we are in the Tuesday session for Bitcoin. It is still Monday for me. And in this case, we've got a few things to talk about. And that is kind of where we left off on Friday. And that was with the low coming in at $78,000 down here, and the move still being in play, but being pretty, volatility remaining very high. We saw Bitcoin set, and we saw the close open, and we talked a little bit about this. The close open from the Friday session into Saturday session, as I do record these after the daily close comes in. We noted that it got above the lower second standard deviation of the Bollinger Bands here in this downtrend, and that there were some important areas to the upside to regain. We're going to take a look at that in more detail here by turning on support and resistance. But I'd drawn out a few scenarios, and that was that Bitcoin comes up, at minimum starts closing above 92 and then holding 89 to 92 essentially as support. That's the preferred scenario. Otherwise, it's going to be, more likely going to put in a lower high and then come back down. And what do we look for? Higher lows or equal lows from there. Now, the higher lows, equal lows scenario is in play now, and we have a lower high essentially at 95,128. And from a trend perspective, there's two big scenarios to look out for here. And that is that Bitcoin comes down and makes a higher low relative to the swing low here at $78,000. Anywhere below there is, well, that's continuation in the lower term and possibly the higher term timeframes, right? But realistically, what bulls are looking for is something like this, either right here or lower, come down, put in a higher low. And I'm not really so concerned about closes at this point in terms of higher lows, because this move is still very volatile. Let's say it comes down to the lower second. Doesn't really matter where it closes as long as it's above that $78,000. And bulls want to see the $95,000 area taken out. That would be a trend break. We would have a higher low swing, or we can look for equal lows. Now, in the case of equal lows, we still need Bitcoin to break the downtrend by closing above 95,128 at this point, right? And if it does swing down lower, but closes above this swing low at 78,167, then same scenario. So even if it swings lower, so a swing lower, we can pretend that that's just like a wick, but it closes above 78,167 here, then we're looking for the bulls to try, or the bulls want to try and break this downtrending high. What I will say, a few things about this particular structure before we get into the support and resistance and kind of go trend, support and resistance, volatility, and then momentum, as we will revisit this concept. But I want to get this out of the way. We had, as I described for a while now, as the weekly has been compressing, because we do have volatility compression on the weekly. And right now we're seeing, volatility expansion presenting itself here, but not below a level of expansion on a close. This last week's candle got bought above the basis band here at now $93,000. I would expect this to be 93.5, because when the candle that opened on Monday was still, before it dumped out, the basis band actually opened at 93.5, which just so happens to be the weekly higher low close open. And we're going to get into this in detail here in a moment, but this was the big area here. We'll make this yellow so it's easier to see. This was at 93.5. Well, the basis band was right there, and essentially it's just $500 below there, but that's because the Monday candle has come down into the Tuesday session and dumped off down towards the lower first again. We had the big expansion to weekly compression, the area that the bulls need to hold on a weekly closing basis to prevent further, to prevent the etchings of expansion close over close would be holding on closes above the lower first now at 83,150. I would say like $83,000 or so, or essentially, we don't want to see closes below there, because then, on the lower term timeframes, it will look as though from a volatility standpoint, we'll be playing between the lower first and the lower second, which is coming in at 73,320. This opened actually right at the prior ranges high before it broke at 73,835. It opened right on it at that lower second. So essentially, like I've said, anywhere below like $80,000, we're looking mid to upper 70s. If it goes down there again, we're probably looking at mid 70s down to the range highs here. And that would encompass this closing high, which is right where price stopped before the breakout at around $68,000 to that 73,835. So you can just generally call it 70 to 75. So anywhere back below 78, it's in the mid to upper 70s already. Then we're looking to 75 to 70K, possibly a swing under 70K to take some more highs from this prior range. That would not be out of the question at all. We have the, I believe this lower high here is at 64, 250. We have the lower third down there, right in that zone, coming in about $1,000 under there at 63. Coming into a compression again, as I've stated before, even though we're getting daily volatility expansion to the downside, because the bands are still compressing on the weekly, lower first, typically first pass, going to be a big bounce. That's what we saw. If it gets tested again, still seen as a support area, especially because there's daily structure in and around that area. But if it does fall apart, we're looking at the lower second. That would just essentially be a retest of this zone down here. Initially in the 73.5, 70, to 70K, if you're looking for direct targets there, and possibly under. But that mid to low 70 area starts to open up if we do start to see Bitcoin lose its most recent low. To the upside, regain the around 93.5. This weekly close open higher low. Then, Bitcoin has a chance. And realistically, from the weekly perspective, if we're going to look at trend, we have a higher high swing, but a lower high close. And realistically, we need to see Bitcoin, even if it starts to get higher highs on the daily, which at this point would be at 95,000 or just over $95,000. That would be a nice downtrend break, but it's got a lot of work to do. And now it's got a weekly close open lower high, not a swing lower high, but a close open lower high in line with the level of volatility to the upside at 102,800. You can call it 103 if you like. That is also in a primary zone of resistance between 101 and 104 that we've talked about on the daily. But anywhere above there, we start entertaining a trip back to the highs and possibly higher to the upper second. Now at 112, anywhere above there, we have the upper third, likely a stopping point in a compression if it were to get there in some sort of massive way at 122 or just over 122 to 122.5 or so. What I will say is the news surrounding crypto and the narrative is all bullish. Many people are very, very bearish on the price action and ignoring the underlying fundamentals of what's happening behind the scenes because it hasn't yet been implemented. And that makes these time periods very, very rife with volatility and actors within the space that want to take advantage of price action to the upside and downside to a much higher degree. So it is not surprising that we're seeing this massive volatility coming into a weekly compression on this daily here. A lot of this is due to the hedge funds that were unwinding their positions coming into the end of the month, and that was not unexpected at all. Their arb trade got squeezed, and it was the end of the month, so might as well unwind. As we came in towards the end of the month, so now it's a new month, and there's likely going to be some more repositioning. What we're trying to gauge is, as retail investors or traders, is do they want to reposition lower? I will tell you, I'm a big fan of expansion through the bands on the daily, and then a failure around the mid to upper first, so basis to the upper first, and then a retest of the lower second wherever that ends up. Currently, it's at that 82 now, or just below 82. This could expand down to the lows and lower, but that's essentially what I'd be looking for at the end of a move if it gets there. That doesn't mean that it's going to reverse and go into an uptrend, but typically that's going to be the end or the totality of that volatile move, and we'll likely start seeing consolidation again. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but it is something that I look for quite often when looking for expansion. So we get, the expansion starts here, a smaller expansion, a retest of the lower second, it kind of rode it down, bounced up towards the basis, and then a retest of the lower second, and then a spike right back to the upside. And then, of course, that was the 99.5, and then dump out. But this is essentially what I look for when I'm looking for volatility expansions and retests and stuff like that. Here we did this kind of move back in June, coming all the way into July, right? We got the expansive move down in the prior range. We got the lower high. So after kicking off expansion and riding the lower second down, mean reversion back to the upper, the basis to upper first is kind of what I look for. And then a retest of the expansion to the downside by the lower second, lower third in that case. But more typically, when you see, a range break, like this is an upside move, right from the lower second to the upper second, mean revert back to the basis, and then a test up towards the upper first, upper second zone. Often see that more than not. You can take a look at like this trend starts to get expansion, mean reversion, retest, and then back down, right? And they can keep doing that, especially if it's turning bearish on expansion for longer term time frames like the weekly. Right now, as it stands for the weekly, though, this is still a compression phase. When does full-on expansion begin? It's either going to begin on the start of it would begin below the lower first, but then we need to see criteria on the weekly meeting on closes below 78, 167. That's actually likely where the lower second is going to compress to if Bitcoin hangs around by the upper first. Otherwise, we look to that lower second. Closes below is where we would get expansion kicking off. And then we need to see, where things end up in this range. And then we look for close over close continuation of that expansion. What does that look like on the daily? That usually looks like, just a continuous downtrend, likely with bounces off of the expanded lower second, maybe playing around between the lower second, lower third. In this case, if things did dip down and get really volatile, because this can happen too, volatile to the downside below the lower third, then we're probably looking around $75,000 on a swing basis. You don't often get closes when bands are this expanded. You don't often get closes below the lower second and lower third. Usually we'll get spikes through. And especially from this kind of a position where the bands are expanded past, price is hovering above that lower first, but below the lower first, but above the lower second. That's just a little bit of volatility theory for you. Do you have to understand all of it? No. These are concepts that I revisit over and over and over again. I also have kind of reviewed this and likely will go over this tomorrow in a Learn TA with Landy live stream with Peace Love Music over with Deorganized Media. So if you're around at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 p.m. or 11 a.m., 10 a.m. Pacific. Man, I'm getting all screwed up with the time zones. But essentially, it's 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There might be a little bit of a late start tomorrow. We'll see. But in general, that's when we start. And then I also revisit this stuff quite often in my analysis here in the recorded format. Okay. Where did the monthly end? Well, we talked about the monthly close. And I talked about the fact that we do have to be on the lookout for when price starts to play below the lower first. Now, luckily, there is last month's low. It can be swung and it can be held. It can be front run, but trading below the upper first standard deviation on the monthly, not what bulls want to see. They want to play in the upper first to upper second zone between that, essentially 84.5. Price starts to rise probably around $85,000 because this will adjust while the candle is open, ever so slightly, to that 106, almost 107 range. So we want to see Bitcoin playing in there for bullish. For bearish, we want it playing below the lower first, testing this low and lower into the zone over here, and you still respect support and resistance. In this case, approaching from the top side here, we're looking at these as supports, and then basis band is something to be aware of there at 60,500 or so. Actually, right around electrical production costs for Bitcoin. So that's an interesting one to note. We haven't really seen electrical cost get hit. Last time we saw it get hit was at, to be fair, it's probably under there, like $50,000, $57,000, $58,000. But last time we saw it actually directly get hit was in March of 2020. We all know what happened then. So I do look at that as like maybe optimistic if you're bearish, right from here, without like a sustained downtrend building, and then going into expansion and electrical costs starting to drop, but and total production cost for that matter, because total production cost is being traded below right now or right around it for miners. Now, let's go ahead and get to that daily. Let's define some criteria for the daily and talk about what to look for and why you maybe shouldn't be so freaked out. If you are freaked out, don't worry too much. There's so much bullish stuff going on in crypto in general that cheaper prices are what everybody asks for. And then when we get them, nobody wants it anymore because they're scared, right? So big thing here, as I mentioned, look at this interplay. Look at this beauty of a Saturday close and then a retest on Sunday before all the news came out, started to rise and then rocket up just above the basis band and the weekly close open higher low that we were just talking about at 93.5. A dump back down right to $85,000, tries to hold it. Now it's dumping down more, looking for 82 and under, as it is starting. It's already breached the closing low. So while we've been talking, it's already breached the closing low. So is this continuation? I'd pay very close attention to 80 to 82,000. And then obviously any drop of that 78,167, we're starting to look down, $76,000, $75,000 and lower, in towards that prior range high area. Now, what do bulls need to do? Again, just like Friday, they need to regain $85,000. It is a short-term time frame support. Now, yes, we've seen it now act as resistance and as support on dailies, so it's getting a little bit more relevant. Above there, we need to see closes above around $89,000, in this case, $88,700 at the 1.168 to the $92,000 area here, and close above, hold this area as support. Basis band is coming in right there and right now. So that would start to look as though Bitcoin could have a shot to go take that weekly at 93.5, and more importantly, take out $95,000, essentially all of these low side resistances on a close and get a higher high. That's the hope for the bulls right here. And kind of right now, they need to start bidding back in if they're going to bid back into this area. We'll see how that kind of goes during the rest of this analysis here. Let's see. What do we have? We have a continuation drive of bearish divergence populating already. I'd say that it's already on its way to playing this out. I wouldn't make too much of it. Let's look at some of the extremes though here, in case things do get really dumpy. If it is going to exit the bearish control zone, 85.5. If it heads down to the bearish critical zone, well, that's all the way down here. That's at $55,000. I'm not looking at that as being a very viable target. I'm curious, what does it have to close above to actually throw bullish divergence? Now, regular bullish divergence would imply lower low closes. And if it is holding the wick lows at 78, it does get a lower low close, it still could throw bullish divergence. So let's go ahead and look at this read here for RSI and get an idea and start planning ahead. Oop, that's not what I wanted. I just wanted to turn this on so I can get that read. It is at a 24. So we'll say it needs to close above a 24.5 or 25. Now this would still imply that it would need to close on lower lows, preferably not losing the $78,000 low, but closing on lower lows, because this is all about closes. And we can actually get a read for what the price level would need to be, and if it would be viable to throw a regular drive of bullish divergence in the bearish control zone. So we're going to go to the critical level. We're going to raise that up to a 24. Can we do a half on this particular indicator? Nope. So we're going to have to see a 25 read. And what would that price be? So that would put it on RSI above, likely a lower low close though. And that would be, oh yeah, 67,800. So basically $68,000, which funny enough is kind of the zone on the weekly that we've talked about, last Friday. And that would be looking at this kind of zone right here, this high specifically at 68,342, where we have a, let's go ahead and actually get that on the chart. So kind of right in this zone, it could still throw some nice regular bullish divergence if it were to put in a low there, and that would be a singular drive. I would err more on the, maybe a wick, but a close like somewhere above the lower second would look good. That would look really good, which is right at the top side, right? So that would look really good on the daily if it did that, to be quite honest. I don't know if we're going to get that. I'm just saying, like, if this continues with its expansion down, that's kind of what I'd be looking for bullish divergence. That, of course, would still throw bullish divergence, but it would break down from the wick low and get that continuation down into that support area in this case. So throwing bullish divergence within this wick low at $78,000, what would it need to do in order to get that? Let's go ahead and, let's go ahead and raise this up a little bit. Let's go to like a 30 read. So 76, nope. So it's got to basically do it here. Very close. It would have to be around a almost a 40 read. Let's go ahead and say okay. I hit the wrong button. So we want to go 38 and we're going to go 32. So about a 32 read. Yeah, 32 read would be 82,000. Let's go ahead and go down to a 30 read. Yeah, it's adjusting with price very, very quickly. Yeah, so somewhere around a 32 read to a 31 read to prevent it from dropping too far down. And then we'll go bring this back to the actual extremes. Worst case scenario is the user alert low, which is $34,000. I do not see that as being viable. That is so far under Bitcoin production cost and electrical cost that, yeah, me personally selling everything to get way, way, way more. But yeah, so far, not too much to be made of that. I was just curious. 12-hour, ran that upper first, expansion down, lower seconds, right down there. We'll put it in lower low position if it closed around it. $79,000 is the area of interest there. What about the 4-hour? 4-hour, it spiked the upper second, expanded through it. Lower second is where? 80,000. So again, 80 to 82 is the area to watch. Anywhere below there, we're likely running that wick low at 78 and maybe under, maybe. But yeah, there's kind of there's still a chance for the bulls to save it here. Higher low, equal low structure is really what they're looking for. Let's go ahead and look at the weekly here as well. I want to note that there's, this would not be good. This would not be a good signal. There is a little bit of mean reversion as a zone here. If it does turn out to be a green candle by the end of the week, it could start to maybe dig itself out from here. Not looking likely right now as price is heading down, but we'll monitor this throughout the week. Let's go look at the daily here with this brighter blue screen, and we'll get rid of these. We don't really need them. What is the momentum pivot for the daily? $81,000. So closes above $81,000 would keep momentum pointed to the upside. Closes below, well, we're probably either already running 80 and under or will run 80 and under to some of those further downside targets. As it stands right now, I would watch this lower second test, really looking at 80 to 82. And then if it drops, likely going to head to the low, maybe lower. Maybe lower. And I'm all for cheaper Bitcoin. I don't look at these scenarios as bearish. I am a collector of Bitcoins, and I suggest that you become one as well. And try to get as many as you can before the government does. That'd be a good idea, the government and institutions. So anyway, I think I'm going to leave you with that. I will follow up with everybody tomorrow during the Learn TA with Landy live stream with Peace Love Music at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, or somewhere about there. And then Wednesday, we'll have the Wednesday check-in after the Wednesday daily close. And I wish you all a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all that being said, Landy out. Take care of yourselves.